beautiful day in Ottawa. I don't have any statement other than the fact that I'm so honored that the Prime Minister made some time for me today, and we have a great day of meetings with a number of ministers. So we're excited. There's lots of work to be done in Nova Scotia. We're no different than any other province, so we know that we have a partner in the federal government to do things that will help Nova Scotia. So I'm excited. Happy to take any questions you guys may have.
It's no secret you ran on a healthcare mandate to get elected. So did you get any commitments in terms of healthcare transfers being increased from the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I'm expecting that there's lots of discussions to take place on the transfers. I'm optimistic for sure. I would definitely say that we also had a big focus on addictions and mental health. So I came today with a specific ask of the Prime Minister and of the federal government for support for a pilot project for addictions and mental health support to help those marginalized communities that are really in need. So I had a pretty, I'd say, enthusiastic response to that. There's a lot of work to be done on details of it, but at broad strokes. I feel very confident with the response I had from the Prime Minister.
What are specific asks, and was it an enthusiastic yes?
Yeah, it's look, we're on the same page that when you think of Canadians are very proud of our healthcare system and the universal access, but over time, addictions and mental health has kind of gotten to an area where it's a bit of two-tiered system. So in Nova Scotia, we're very focused on universal mental health care to make sure that access to financial resources doesn't limit somebody's ability to access care. So the pilot program we're talking about would really focus on standing up some clinics around the province. 16 clinics, we're talking in the range of $70 million over 3 years. So it will open up a lot of opportunities for people to access addictions and mental health support, particularly focused on youth. And we know we've seen the statistics on youth suicides and the impact on youths, and we know that if we can get to them with proper support at the right time, we can change their life.
What about the Atlantic Loop? Did you get any commitments for the federal government on that?
Yeah, so healthcare, we talked about the environment, we talked about Atlantic Loop, certainly we talked about, we came out of, in Nova Scotia, we finished our session of the legislature a couple weeks ago. We passed very aggressive environmental legislation focused on getting off coal. Atlantic Loop is a big part of us getting off coal, and the Prime Minister and his team know that. It's expensive, but Nova Scotians, Atlantic Canada in general, will bear a disproportionate amount of the overall cost for this country to get off coal. Somewhere in the range of 55% of the cost would fall to Nova Scotians. And Nova Scotians have already invested significantly in getting off coal. Nova Scotian taxpayers have invested somewhere in the range of $5 billion over the last decade to get where we are. So we know that getting off coal is critical, but we also know that it can't all fall to the shoulders of the ratepayers of Nova Scotia. The Prime Minister's team knows that and agrees with that, so we'll continue to work on the details of it. But at the highest level, there's agreement on what needs to be done.
What do you need from the federal government to make the loop happen?
The ask that's on the table across the Atlantic provinces, so a portion from New Brunswick and a portion from Nova Scotia, is in the range of $5 billion. That's the order of magnitude of the cost to make the Atlantic Loop happen. So what we're asking is for federal support for that amount.
It sounds like you didn't comment any specific yes from the Prime Minister, though, that there was no specific commitment made, if that's not what you're saying here.
Well, listen, I didn't expect him to pull his checkbook out during the meeting, but what I would say was I feel very confident that we're on the same page with the Prime Minister on a number of issues, and that the Prime Minister understands the importance of the things we're asking for around addictions and mental health, around the Atlantic Loop, that he understands that they're important and that he agrees they're important. So I have no reason to feel discouraged after that meeting, I would say that.
What happens if Ottawa does not support this project?
Look, we want to get off coal by 2030. With renewables. The Atlantic Loop is I would call the most direct route to making that happen. If for some reason we need a plan B or a plan C, then we'll work on those. But right now, today, I'm very focused on the Atlantic Loop. Atlantic Canadians are focused on the Atlantic Loop. So I believe is our federal government. So that's where the focus is, and that's where the focus will remain.
Was there any discussion about having an in-person meeting with all the premiers before the end of the year?
That's something we talked about as the Council of the Federation with the Prime Minister over the last couple of weeks. I think it might have been last week on a teleconference. There's a great desire to have that in-person meeting. I don't believe it'll be before the end of the year.
When do you think it'll be?
I think the ask of the Council of the Federation was early in the new year.
Given what's happening in British Columbia right now with the flooding and knowing your province also has its own vulnerabilities to climate change, does that meeting have to have a conversation about Canada not being ready and needing to adapt more to climate change?
Obviously, what's happening in BC is devastating. There's a big storm front crossing Nova Scotia over the next couple of days as well. So big concern about that. So all of these issues point to the same thing: is that the world's changing, and we have to take steps to preserve our planet for future generations. So I think that's a discussion everyone is wanting to have. I know it's on the certainly forefront of the Prime Minister's mind, as it is mine, as evidenced by the legislation that we passed in Nova Scotia. So I think these are all discussions that everyone feels a certain sense of urgency around. I certainly do.
Did you raise the issue of did you ask the federal government for any support to protect your province from climate-related flooding, like Chinecto-Isthmus, for example?
Not in today's meeting, no. I mean, today's meeting was focused on healthcare and addictions and mental health, Atlantic Loop, and immigration as well. We have very ambitious population growth targets, so I'm very pleased that the immigration ministers from my home riding. I have a lot of respect for Sean Fraser. So those were the topics today. But certainly, when we talk about the environment, we know that there's local issues, there's national issues, and there's a lot of issues.
Is there a specific number that you came to the Prime Minister with in terms of the increase in healthcare transfers to your province?
No, not. I mean, those are discussions that are happening, but the specific numbers, I guess, I had today for the Prime Minister were around the addictions and mental health pilot in the range of $70 million over 3 years, Atlantic Loop, and the immigration target numbers.
How about housing, affordable housing? Did you get any signals or commitments that your province can expect more funding in that area?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about housing as well. That's a discussion you always have in the context of population growth. We're already in a housing crisis in Nova Scotia, as are many areas. So we talked about just infrastructure in general, and housing is a big part of that discussion, for sure.
How about vaccine mandates? What's the situation in terms of the legislature in Nova Scotia? There's a bit of a concern here in Ottawa that there's some Conservatives with exemptions. And the House Leader today seemed to think that it was statistically not possible for that many Conservatives in a caucus of 118 or 19 to have that many exemptions. Is there a similar discussion or rules going on in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I mean, our session of the legislature's done, and every member was in place and fully vaccinated across all the parties. It wasn't an issue there. And we have a vaccine mandate. November 30th is a big date in Nova Scotia, because that's the date that if you're not fully vaccinated or not on the train towards full vaccination, you won't be working in healthcare in Nova Scotia or in education. So we know that in our province, that's a critical date, and sadly we'll lose people. But when we weigh it up, I personally believe if without that mandate, we'd lose a lot more.
I think there's enough leadership being shown here in Parliament Hill on vaccine mandates for the rest of the country.
Do I think it's leadership to show it, to require it?
Do you think that the debate that's going on right now, in terms of MPs are still talking about this, and today's the first day of the House here in Parliament, so whether many MPs don't want to disclose their vaccination status, we know that some aren't vaccinated within the Conservative caucus. Is that leadership on a national stage for an issue that you see as important to public health?
I mean, I guess what I would say is there wasn't a prolonged discussion about it in Nova Scotia. People just know that when you're in a position of leadership, we all want to get past the pandemic. The best way to get past the pandemic is through vaccinations. It was not a prolonged discussion, certainly in my caucus or in our legislature. And in general in society, it's not. There are some people that don't like the vaccine mandate, but I do, and there's no question about that.
Do elected members have a responsibility in your mind to be double vaccinated?
In my mind, they do. Elected members have a responsibility to show leadership on all issues in their community, and right now, getting through the pandemic, it's the most important issue for most Canadians, certainly most Nova Scotians, and for me, on that, leadership means if you're able to get vaccinated, you get vaccinated, no questions.
How long can premiers like yourself wait before you have an in-person meeting with the Prime Minister to talk about everything that your province and others are experiencing? Yeah,
I think there's a sense of urgency to have that meeting. I believe it will probably take place in January, and I think that's in the right time frame.
Did you get that from the Prime Minister? Or?
We didn't talk specifically about the date of the meeting, but I know from the discussion last week that there's everyone at all levels feels the sense of urgency to meet, whether it's minister to minister, Prime Minister, premiers, but certainly I'm focused on in-person meeting of the premiers for a lot of reasons. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.